Hello, fellow management professionals and lovers of Thirukkural. It is both an honor and a joy to speak before you today to speak on the subject very close to my heart, corporate governance through the lens of Thirukkural. I want to begin with a story from my own career. In 1985, as a young assistant manager, I entered the steel industry in Tiruchirappalli, bright-eyed, energetic, and perhaps a little naive. I thought I was stepping into a world of opportunity. What I encountered instead was an education in the darker side of corporate life. The managing director of the company I joined controlled not one but two firms. One was a public limited company owned by shareholders, and the other a private company owned solely by him. He devised a scheme where high quality ingots and billets produced by the public company were deliberately marked as scrap and transferred to his private company at throwaway prices. That private company would then convert these ingots into high grade steel rods and sell them in the market at a prices lower than those of the public limited company. The result, the shareholders of the public limited company suffered. The sales team of the public company was demoralized, and the MD's private company flourished at the cost of the very people he was duty bound to serve. I could not bring myself to be complicit, so I resigned. Within 3 years, both companies collapsed, but the lesson stayed with me for life. Without ethics, no enterprise can survive, no matter how brilliant its business model may appear. My next employer, English Electric, a British multinational, offered me the exact opposite environment. Here, I experienced a culture built on ethics, professionalism, and trust. That contrast, the fall of one company, the flourishing of another, prompted me to reflect deeply on what gives organizations longevity and resilience. Later, in 1994, my research aligned with the work of Arie de Geus of Royal Dutch Shell. Corporations on average live only 40 to 50 years before collapsing or restructuring. But some companies like Shell, Sumitomo, and DuPont outlive generations because they behave not like machines but like living organisms, learning, adopting, nurturing people, and holding fast to values. It was at this point that I began to look back at the wisdom of Thirukkural, a text composed over 2000 years ago by the sage Thiruvalluvar. I discovered to my amazement that this ancient work, so simple in language, so profound in meaning, offers enduring lessons for leadership, governance, and sustainability. Let us step back for a moment. What is corporate governance? At its core, it is the framework of rules, practices, and processes through which companies are directed and controlled. It balances the interests of shareholders, employees, customers, suppliers, government, and society. Modern thinkers like Bob Tricker and David W. Duffy describes governance in terms of accountability, transparency, fairness, responsibility, efficiency, and ethics. But these are not inventions of our time. The Thirukkural articulated them over 2 millennia ago, not merely as personal values but as statecraft and governance principles. In other words, what we today call corporate governance is but a modern label for timeless ethical imperatives. Bob Tricker outlined 4 fundamental pillars: accountability, transparency, fairness, and responsibility. Thirukkural couplet 546 tells us about accountability. It is not the spear but the scepter of justice that brings success to a king. Ancient kings were held accountable to their people, just as modern boards are accountable to their shareholders. History warns us of its absence in transparency. The Dutch East India Company, the VOC, collapsed in parts of corruption and secrecy. Because of corruption and secrecy and lack of accountability, they lost their competition with British East India Company. Thirukkural couplet 553 cautions that a ruler who does not investigate wrongs daily will see his kingdom decline. Isn't this the same as today's demand for accurate financial reporting and independent audits? Modern management has the hot stove rule. Everyone is treated the same when rules are broken. Thirukkural couplet 541 echoes this by urging the rulers to investigate without bias and deliver impartial justice. Equality before justice, then as now, builds trust. Perhaps the deepest of all is the responsibility. Couplets such as 547 affirms that the ruler's dignity lies in protecting his people. History shows that when leaders forget this, whether kings or CEOs, they lose legitimacy. These principles, articulated 2000 years ago, mirrors Tricker's model point for point. Ethics, it seems, are not just timeless, they are universal. Now let us turn to David Duffy. He reminds us that governance structures means little unless board themselves are effective through composition, efficiency, and ethical conduct. Thirukkural anticipated this truth. Couplet 517 says, only after evaluating the task, the means, and the person's suitability should the task be assigned. Isn't this the essence of modern job description and person specification? Another couplet 445 calls ministers the eyes of the king. In today's terms, the board is the eyes of the corporation. Without clear vision, leadership is blind. And when ethics fail, we know the story Enron Satyam Wirecard. Once ethics and accountability collapse, even giants crumble overnight. Thiruvalluvar would not have been surprised. He warned us that ill-gotten wealth never lasts. Audit and compliances may sound like dry technicalities, but they are moral imperatives. Thirukkural 478 tells us there is no harm even if income is small, provided expenditure remains within one's means. That is financial prudence in its purest form. But governance cannot stop at compliances alone. It must embrace society, environment, the modern concept of corporate social responsibility. Thirukkural's constant emphasis on justice, compassion, and service shows us that responsibility extends far beyond the boardroom. Now, let us see some case studies. The Wadia Group, founded in 1736, built ships for the British East India Company. Over centuries, it weathered storms, disputes, betrayal, and weakening alliances, demonstrating resilience rooted in adaptability. We all know how tactfully they reduced their shareholding with Punjab Kings IPL teams. Thirukkural 484 talks about right time, right place, and loyalty of workforce. TATA Steel, founded in 1907, embedded itself in the community of Jamshedpur. Instead of starting a plant near Bombay where they had their headquarters, they preferred to go to the place where they would get the expertise. Similarly, they also aligned their starting of the factory with the Home Rule movement that started in India. Long before corporate social responsibility was coined, TATA Steel pioneered welfare measures, the 8 hours workday, maternity benefits, schools for the employees' children, and medical care. They understood that workers are not machines but human beings. In the process, today, TATA Steel is one among the leading steel makers in the world. The TVS Group, born in Madurai in 1911, became legendary for its punctuality, reliability, and process discipline. Its buses were so consistent that people in Madurai set their watches by the arrival of a bus to a particular bus stop. The ethic of accountability, drivers were questioned even for unnecessary braking, translated into a culture of excellence that still drives TVS today. A company that started with roadways today is manufacturing automobiles. Thirukkural 611 talks about steadfast efforts brings honor, and TVS Group had the honor of winning the award for safety and quality. Corporate governance is often described as modern regulatory framework. But the truth is deeper. Its core values, ethics, accountability, responsibility, and justice are timeless. Thiruvalluvar articulated them 2000 years ago in couplets that remain as fresh and relevant today as when they were first spoken. Consider this. McKinsey tells us that the average lifespan of an S&P 500 company today is less than 18 years, which was 61 years earlier. Yet, Congo Gumi, a Japanese company founded in the year 578 AD, still thrives. Why? Because values endures. Governance is not about quarterly profits. It is about legacy. The question before us then is not how profitable our companies will be this year, but whether they will be cherished by generations to come. if we, as leaders, as board members, as professionals, can embody the ethical compass of Thirukkural, then we can create organizations that not only survive but endure. Organizations that honors shareholders, uplift communities, and contribute to human flourishing. Thank you.